This is my 4G63 Turbo out of my 1997 Mitsubishi Eclipse GST. This engine had 198,000 miles on it when it locked up and was mostly stock, except for some generous donations by Victor Johnson. I was able to update the intake and the exhaust. I bought this car in 2009 for $1,200 in Clermont, Florida. The car needed a load of work, and according to the Craigslist ad, it was missing fourth gear. It wouldn't go in gear or stay in gear, and I drove it like that for another 2 years. The previous owner had a Greddy Type S blow-off valve and an exhaust tip already installed. I ended up putting on a 14V turbo that I traded from Chucky Jackson off his first-gen Mitsubishi Eclipse GSX. The head was rebuilt at 192,000 miles when I put Prestone coolant flush in and left it in too long. I noticed that it was overheating and tried to flush it on the side of the road, but it was apparently too late. It caused a pinhole to get in the head gasket. And I drove it like that for another 2 months. And I would drive to Tampa and I would have to stop halfway to take the cap off, relieve all the pressure, and put more coolant in. I took the head off and had Ed Lima's Accurate Automotive clean it, deck it, polish it, remove the bent valves, and swap in some used Beehive valve springs. This was the condition of the car when I did the cylinder head rebuild. It was at 199,413 miles. I had to do the whole thing in my dad's single car garage. The engine bay was pretty messy, so when I did the rebuild, I ended up cleaning some things and tucking some things away. I got it all back together with a ARP head studs and a nip-on head gasket. It was running great, and one night, I guess I left it a little low on oil. I was driving the car pretty hard, and it started knocking. I got the car back to my girlfriend's house, now my wife, and I'm sitting there listening to the engine, I'm revving it up slightly, and all of a sudden it just stops dead. Like from idle to zero in less than a second. Try to start it again and it just clicked. Paul helped me get the car back to my house. The car sat for a long time and then it sat a little longer. Eventually I was able to purchase a house, so my dad helped me load up the car trailer that I borrowed from Josh, and we were able to take it over to my house, where it then sat in the garage for a little bit. Then I ended up deciding to pull the engine out. I ended up doing that in just a few hours one night. I then ended up pulling the car all the way back into the side of my house. And for the past 6 years, I have been wondering what really happened. I have suspicions that it was crank walk because I left out the reverse bolt that goes the opposite direction, facing the passenger side. You have to get it from the driver's side. And when you leave that bolt out, it can cause the whole crankshaft to basically torque and cause crank walk. So now I'm going to open up the oil pan and see what the damage is. First I need to flip over the engine so I can take off the oil pan. I need to remove all these 10mm bolts and the 4 10mm bolts holding on the turbo oil drain pipe. Just loosen all these oil pan bolts up, then remove the turbo oil drain pipe bolts. Remove all the oil pan bolts. This drain pipe doesn't want to come off easy usually, so I'm going to tap it with a hammer. This oil pan, however, requires a lot of tapping and prying. Just going to see if this actually moves at all. Removing the oil windage tray. Removing the rod bearing cap nuts. These rod bearing caps don't look bad. I should be able to reuse them. These bearings are really stuck to the crank and they look really worn and like they got really hot. This rod bearing looks even worse. Just put back 4 of these oil pan bolts, and in the next video I'll check out the crankshaft main bearings and rod bearings.